Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back, guys. We're here with part 3 in our final installment of The Apartments. I can't wait to see what Claudine is going to tell us today. It's all about what happened to them after they were done being used by the royal family. Let's find out.
So where we left off was how these rooms, the decoration of all of these rooms, but they've gone through quite a few things to get from the 17th century to where we are today. But in March of 1721, a double marriage was planned that would seal the deal of peace with Spain, hoping this was going to be the third time was the charm. There is a event that they've even made a movie about it, but you've heard this phrase many times called the exchange of the princesses. And this could go for different periods. There is the one of Marie de Medici's daughter. There's also the one of Louis XIV, and then there's also the one of Louis XV. So the exchange of the princesses isn't really a catch-all phrase and come up to one thing. But this one was Louis Elizabeth Orleans, Louise, as she was the daughter of the regent and the infanta of Marie and Victoire, was the 11-year-old, brother of our sister of Louis XV. The infanta was 4 years old. An exchange took place in 1722. She decided when she was going to come to Paris, that she would move into the rooms of Anne of Austria. Her arrival was slated for March, and a massive update began quickly on the rooms. The Salle des Empereurs was changed into a chapel, woodwork and plaster sculpted by Claude Audrien and gilded by Paul Charon. Crimson and damask furniture with silver and engraved crystal with the Bourbon fleur-de-lis and the arms of France and Spain were everywhere. So Louis XV, at 11 years old, met the Infanta at 4 years old in the town of Bourg-la-Reine, and that is just 9 kilometers south of Paris. And then they arrived at the Louvre on March 2nd, 1722. The streets were lined with thousands of people when they came into the city. And the first week that she was there, again, keep in mind that she's 4 years old.
That's insane.
She was visited every day by members of the royal family, the prince and princesses of the blood, foreign ministers, members of parliament, all came to see her. She had to basically receive them. The second week included a ball in the Hotel de Ville and also at the Opera House. And Te Deum was played at Notre Dame, where she had to attend all of these things and had to be like basically a 4-year-old that was behaving like, somebody that was like 20.
Can't believe they even could ask that of her.
I know, it's very strange. On June 15th, 1722, Louis XV and the court moved to Versailles as the cost of guards and staff in the Louvre just to take care of her and watch her was getting so expensive. He'd rather spend his money on all of his women and parties. But on March 11th, 1725, it was decided to return her to Spain and call off the marriage. She left Versailles on April 5th, 1725. When she was there, because she was a toddler, essentially. He was supposed to spend time with her. And of course, we're not talking about, it is way too soon for them to like consummate the relationship. And it was just betrothed. So it wasn't an actual wedding, but he would, hang out with her and be like, what am I supposed to do? I can't even talk to her. She's, I'm 11, 12 years old at this point. She's 4 or 5 years old. Just all very, very bizarre. And again, you didn't really have a choice in that, but they were all to hopefully seal this deal of peace with Spain that was had to do in but over three different kings to try to do this.
I know, imagine this 11-year-old just hanging out with a 4-year-old being like, so how about that peace accord?
Yeah, hey girl, so when you're queen,
We can get this thing going.
we could get this thing going. It's very strange, but she is still remembered because the garden that is outside the vestibule, which isn't really a garden, and it hasn't been for a very long time. If you are walking to the Louvre and you're on the backside and you are coming from like the Pont des Arts and you go into the Cour Carré, it's the quote unquote garden is to your left, and it's behind kind of a big fence right now because they have been using it for years for like the workplace for them, all the restoration they're doing. When it was closed, it's been closed. It was closed since 2018. When it was closed, they had been doing work on like the plumbing and the HVAC, and of course, and they did all the restoration of the ceilings and everything. So this, I mean, they've even like poured and laid concrete because they had huge, portable units set up during the Olympics. They used this kind of as like the bicycle police brigade were set up there because it's such a easy central place in the middle of the downtown city. So it's now, because they're going to go back and do more work on it again. It's not really much of a garden, and it's never, as long as I've known, it's never been, even when it was it had some grass in there, it was never open to the public.
Yeah,
but
I think
it is the Jardin de l'Enfant, so it is named for her.
Yeah, I think I've walked by there several times and been like, what the heck is this? This is kind of a mess.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess. I always love to look up when you're in the upper rooms and look down into it. And then that's when it was, I don't know, in the late spring. And I was like, oh, they're tearing down those portables. I was like, maybe they're finally going to be done. But then they just changed it and did it for the Olympics. And then now they'll start the work on it again. And I'll tell you at the end what is going to still happen to these rooms. During the revolution, though, I had mentioned last week about Louis XIV up and leaving and going to Versailles in 1682. The academies and the artists were there for more than 140 years, even through the revolution. The Salle des Saisons, which was used specifically because you had the academy in some of these rooms, the Academy of paintings. There was a father and a son, and they were known as the citizen Jean-Joseph and Eugène Sue. And anytime you're doing research and you come across where it'll say like citizen Giuseppe or citizen, Crystal, it was because that is during the revolution, that was what everybody was called. Because now they're just everybody's equal.
I love that citizen.
Citizen, yeah. So this was a father and son who were also surgeons. They were given one of the rooms in her apartments, the Salle des Saisons, and where they actually taught anatomy to the artists. Excuse me. They would bring the artists in, and because that is another reason why you see in paintings, I have people all the time that say, well, why are the people always naked? Especially when you're talking about classic art and like even, like the neoclassicism and that whole period. And it was because that was their way of showing how good they were, because they were like, look, I could paint this person's body with all the muscular toning and, tendons and everything. And look how good I am.
Yeah, well, you definitely needed someone to teach us those things.
Yeah. So they would go in there, this artist would study with these two surgeon and doctors and telling them about how like the human body works and how like muscles would move. And if you're painting somebody like, like David's, the Horati how they are pushing forward and their arm is up in the air. It is showing that, how good their muscle tone is. And I love that there was a surgeon there that was teaching them. During the revolution, as we had said during the other episodes, the decor was rather lavish and was falling out of favor. So the walls of the apartments were stripped of their decoration and only the ceilings remained. The royal monikers and paintings of the kings and queens were also taken out, and the rooms were given over to the Museum of Antiquities, which had been moved from the Salle des Caryatides, which is where they were under Louis XV. So there was art in the Louvre because it was a palace, but it's going back to Henry IV. So going back to the mid 16th century is when things started to be placed into the Louvre. On September 16th, 1792, the Legislative Assembly founded the Musée Central des Arts and inaugurated on August 10th, 1793, which is what we know of the Louvre as the Louvre. And it was in a fraction of what the Grand Gallery is today. Under Napoleon, they would change the name to, of course, the Musée Napoleon, because of course you would. Why wouldn't you name it after yourself? At first, the salon of the former apartments was used to hold paintings, including Rubens' Medici cycle, which I love, and Giorgione's concert, that is the one that is on the wall behind the Mona Lisa and is the one that inspired Manet to do Déjeuner sur l'herbe. As a part of the museum on November 23rd, 1793, it was decided the room would hold bronze and metal statues. When Napoleon began to send back the looted bounty, his statuary that he was stealing from all over Italy, they decided to put them outside in the garden where they actually had some small structures created where they would could shield the art, but people could walk around it. The Apollo Belvedere was also placed there. On July 29, 1798 is when all the stolen loot from the Italian campaigns began to arrive back in Paris, and the interior walls were replaced with columns as well that we had mentioned. During, at the beginning when it was added into the museum, Visconti, who was the curator of the statuary, he and his son would be Louis Visconti, who would be the one that would double the size under Napoleon III for the Louvre. But he had changed all the names. The Hall of Seasons were made the same, but the vestibule became the Hall of Illustrious Men, and the Grand Cabinet of War turned into the Hall of Romans. The Grand Chambre de l'Eau and the Hall to the Hall de l'Action, and the Emperor to the Hall of Apollo. Now, when you're in the Emperor rooms, if you look, it says the Salle d'Augusto, quite a few different names. On August 15th, 1803, Napoleon's birthday, of course, with Josephine, he ended up coming in and seeing all of these pieces that he had stolen, and had them in the room. And then later that day, it opened to the public. When you do have, especially Napoleon and then his nephew, Napoleon III, did it, there's specific dates. And France does this as well, that it's like, okay, November 7th, because that is when I had the coup and I became emperor. So every year on November 7th, we will do something. We'll reopen something. So the August 15th is you have as Napoleon's birthday, that he tried to make Saint Napoleon's Day, but then later, Emperor Napoleon III that would be the day he'd rechristen the Louvre, was on August 15th. So in some ways it makes being a historian a little easier, because they just basically pick the same 5 dates for everything.
That's easy, yeah, to remember.
Makes it pretty easy. So the reason why these rooms are closing to this day, they had always been a part of the museum. Prior to 2018, these were the Roman statuary. So in a way, it kind of has always had Roman statuary in there. They had closed the rooms, emptied it to do this whole restoration of it. Those pieces have been gone since 2018, the Roman statuary. There was a amazing tile mosaic on the wall of the Muses of Zeus that I loved, that I haven't seen in now ages and ages. But they took all of that out to restore the room, of course. And then they put, when it has been open, this last summer and fall, it held a visiting exhibition of a collection from Italy, the Torleone, and it is now on its way. I think it's going to be in New York or in Chicago, Dallas, and I think the Getty in LA. But so that's why they closed it, because that's gone now, and then they will do the restoration. So the restoration, I think that the rooms that were Anne of Austria's are done. But then on the other side of it, where they had the court of Sphinx and the other rooms, as far as the ceilings, I think they won't touch those, but they're going to move in the ninth department. So they've added a ninth department to the Louvre, and this is going to be the Byzantine art and Christianity, and that's what they are going to redo. They're bringing in a outside architecture firm, of course. So kind of like the art of Islam, which is a beautiful part of the Louvre that opened, I think it's been 10 or 12 years now. That is kind of what they're going to do here. So that is why it is closing again and won't be open until 2028. But it should be really interesting. But it is, I'm hoping that they're keeping the Roman pieces in there, and someday we will eventually see those again before we die. But it should be really interesting, and it is always exciting that they're adding a new department, which they haven't done for such a long time. But hopefully that doesn't make other parts suffer. That whole lower ground floor level of the Denon wing, after the apartments, it's all offices. So it is the busiest wing of the Louvre, because this is where the Mona Lisa is, and this is where you wing Victory and Venus and everything. She's kind of Sully, but this side is the busiest part of the Louvre. There's no second floor on this side, and there's no ground floor on this side. So it's the busiest, and it's all pretty much on the first floor.
Well, we can't wait for it to reopen, and at least we have your photos and videos in the meantime. So everyone, head over to ClaudineHemingway.com to learn more, and tune in next week. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.